Hi everyone, Katerina here. Today we are talking about problems in e-commerce marketing hiring. And for anyone who is an agency owner or a brand, this is for you. If you hired 2 or 3 marketers in the last year and all of them underperformed or something was off and you think it's talent problem, it's not. It's usually hiring or systems problem. So you probably didn't expect that, but let me explain a little bit more before you see what's going on there. So I run an e-commerce focused recruiting agency and we did a couple of tests. We even started making our own product with AI rating, which flopped. You probably saw that in the previous videos, but for today we'll focus more on the agency side and how we do our recruiting aspect. So as a recruiting agency, we screen more than 20 people per week per role. And I can tell you that both good and even great talent still exists. What doesn't exist is actually good vetting, especially if you're not doing recruiting and hiring on scale. So let's start with the most relevant problem in terms of hiring, which is something that I almost always see in e-commerce. You often don't hire specialists, but you focus more on generalists. But if you're hiring generalists who did more quantity than quality, you're definitely missing out. And at that point, it's not a talent problem, it's your problem because you didn't set up your priorities right. So in these cases, most brands are hiring an e-commerce marketer, but what they actually hire is a digital marketer who maybe touched e-commerce once. And at that point, same is for agencies. So if you hire someone who worked, for example, for a bigger agency because they've been well known in the space and they also had some great talent there, that's not always the case. And that's something that we often see from our side because we hired and poached a lot of people from those agencies. And more often than not, especially today, I see that most of them are actually more focused on quantity rather than quality. And that's a huge problem, especially if your agency is just now growing, you're hiring your first initial hires that will help you scale and grow your business. And those agencies that you look up to, they're mostly just that, like big names, and that's it. They already have their clients, they're super solid in the space, so they sell based on their name, not based on the quality. You don't have that luxury. And at that point, your best bet is your first hires, which have to be killers and someone who will also move the needle. And if you're a brand who hired more of a digital marketer, you have to understand that e-commerce is not general social media marketing. It's not lead gen, it's retention, life cycle, lifetime value, it's customer journey and pressure. And you know what I'm talking about here. Black Friday, Cyber Monday, in general, seasonal drops, campaigns, build-ups around it, and that's number one priority. So you have to have someone who actually understands this seasonal and holiday campaign performances. If someone, for example, in e-commerce email marketing space never owned a Klaviyo end-to-end setup, you are gambling. And you're gambling if you are just poaching from your biggest competitors. Been there, done there. Again, I know why I'm saying this, and it doesn't mean it doesn't work. It will work at some point, but in most cases, especially today, they're just training juniors and they just give them 10 plus clients in their first month, which is just crazy and it doesn't work. So they just give them templates. They already have other team members like copywriters, email designers, Klaviyo technicians, you name it. And then they focus on building campaigns. So they don't really understand the quality behind them and what's actually bringing results. So you should do it. You can still poach from other agencies, but you just need a proper system and vetting in place to make sure that you're actually making it right. Second problem, of course, going to the next stage, which is interviewing. You interview vibes, not results and skills. Most interviews sound like, tell me about your usual campaign setup process for new e-commerce brands, or what tools do you use usually in the e-commerce space? How do you stay up to date? That tells you literally nothing. And at that point, you have to dive deeper. So what we do on our side, we test, we audit, we ask scenarios, speaking with many different email specialists and agency owners to figure out what their day-to-day will look like in their first 30 days. What problems will they encounter? What's the usual scenario that they often see in this first 30 days? And then we ask them, super specific questions. And at that point, we can see how they think on their feet. That is also one point where I would say 70 to 80% of them fail, because if they cannot explain the process in depth and actual logic behind it, whether it's performance focused or just in general, then we have a problem. And going to the final problem, which is panic hiring. So we saw that year after year, especially Q3 and Q4. So you are panic hiring because revenue dips, clients are waiting for their campaigns, nothing is set up for Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and suddenly you're hiring in panic mode. And that's a huge problem again, because you lower the bar, you rush the whole process, you convince yourself that they can figure it out. Of course they don't, but you are stuck at that point with another person who needs salary on monthly basis, and they didn't figure it out after month 3. Because what you did is they shadowed you or someone else from the team for 1 or 2 days, and then third day you already gave them 4 new clients to set up everything from scratch, and you just show them where you have your playbooks, SOPs, and one long video. That's not going to work. Of course, as everything else, there is a fix. Not a quick fix or a silver bullet. We don't sell that because that doesn't exist. But there is always a way to figure this out. So nothing pretty, nothing new, nothing sexy or something like that. Just the boring stuff. Hiring should be boring, and it should be predictable, process driven, and my days in most cases just look like one another, and they all follow the same pattern. So my interviews always have specific questions, they always have specific areas to cover, but the real talk is always different. And yes, it's boring. Yes, sometimes it can be overwhelming, especially if you are doing it on scale as we are, but that's our job. That doesn't mean that I don't hear them. I listen to them. I listen to their processes, how they figure things out. I take notes and listen to their specific answers, because I'm also learning from them. On another side, if it feels stressful and every time you are entering the interview with a potential new hire and you have no clue where to start, something is definitely broken. So think about it next time you're hiring. If you want, of course, some help on fixing this, you can always ping me anytime, LinkedIn, DMs, or email. If not, you can always steal this framework and save some money instead of lighting it on fire. And if you did save some, just let me know.